Have you ever been sitting in a maths class and heard your teacher say the words imaginary numbers and thought to yourself, imaginary like made up, is this even real maths? You're not alone. For most people, the moment they hear imaginary numbers, their brain just shut down. It sounds confusing, unnecessary, and even fake. After all, how can something be a number and still be imaginary? But here's the thing most people don't even realize. Imaginary numbers are not imaginary in the way we think of fiction or fantasy. They are real part of mathematics. And believe it or not, they are used in real life technologies all around us. We're talking about things like cell phones, electrical engineers, Wi-Fi signals, medical imaging, quantum physics, even your music apps and computer graphics. All of these use imaginary numbers in some form. They aren't just some weird concept stuck in a dusty textbook. They are a part of how the modern world functions. But I get it. The name imaginary doesn't help. It makes it sound like math suddenly turned into Harry Potter. Like mathematics just gave up and said, let's just pretend. But what really happened is far more interesting. Imaginary numbers were created out of necessity because real numbers simply weren't enough. Let me ask you a question. Can you take the square root of a negative number? Try it. What is the square root of -1? Your calculator might just give an error. And that is because there is no real number that you can square and get your negative result. And that's exactly where this journey begins. In this video, we are going to explore why imaginary numbers were invented in the first place, what they actually mean, and how they are used in the real world, and why they are way more real than their name suggests. By the end, you won't just understand imaginary numbers, you will appreciate them. Let's start with the problem that led to their creation, a simple equation that broke the rules of the real number system. Let's go back to the question from the intro. What is the square root of -1? If you try it on paper or type into a calculator, you will quickly run into a wall. Why? Because in the world of real numbers, there is a strict rule. Any number multiplied by itself or squared is always positive. Let's test it. Even. You can square any real numbers, positive or negative, and the result will never be negative. So when we are faced with something like x square equal to -1, there is no real number that works. There is nothing on the real world number line that can save us here. And for a long time in history, mathematicians simply called this impossible. But then something revolutionary happened. Instead of giving up, someone asked, what if we just define a new kind of number, one that can handle this problem? So they invented a symbol, that is I, which is square root of -1. That's it, just a new idea, a new kind of number. And suddenly we had solution to equations that were once considered unsolvable. Now when we see x square equal to -1, we can confidently say that x equal to I. And this small step, introducing a number that could square to give a negative, opened the door to an entirely new world of mathematics. It's kind of like discovering a hidden dimension. Before, we were stuck on a non-dimensional number line, just going back and forth between positives and negatives. But now, we can go in a completely new direction. And that leads us an important question. If imaginary numbers aren't on the real number line, what do they actually exist? And what do they look like? That's exactly what we are going to explore in the next part. So we now have this strange new number. I is equal to square root of -1. It's not on a real number line and it doesn't behave like any numbers we have seen before. So what does it actually mean? To understand this, let's go back to something familiar, the number line. Imagine the real number line. It's a straight line that runs left and right, 0 in the middle. Positive numbers go to the right, negative numbers go to the left. This line represents all real numbers. But now we have introduced a number that doesn't fit anywhere on that line. So instead of trying to force it onto the number line, mathematicians did something brilliant. They created a new axis. Just like in geometry, where we use x and y axis to create a 2D plane, they added a vertical axis, one that is perpendicular to the real number line. On this new vertical axis, they placed all the imaginary numbers. Now we are not stuck with just a line. We have an entire plane, a complex plane. This plane has two directions: the horizontal axis for real numbers, the vertical axis for imaginary numbers. And just like in 2D space, we can combine both directions. So a number like 3 plus 2i means move 3 steps on the real axis and 2 steps on the imaginary axis. It's just like the coordinates on a map. This new kind of number is called a complex number, and it's look like a plus bi, where a is the real part and b is the imaginary part. It turns out this system isn't weird or unnatural at all. In fact, it's a more complete way of understanding numbers. And here is the really cool part. Using this idea, mathematicians can now represent rotation, oscillation, growth, wave motion, all using simple maths. The number which just rotates us 90 degrees from the real line becomes a key player in how we understand motion, cycles, and even electricity. So, imaginary numbers aren't fake, they are just numbers in different directions and different dimensions of math. And now that we understand what imaginary numbers are, it's time to ask the big question. Why do we even care, and what do we use them for? That's coming up in the next part. By now, you might be thinking, okay, imaginary numbers make some mathematical sense, but do they actually matter? Like outside the exams? The answer is absolutely. Imaginary numbers and the complex numbers they create are used in some of the most important technologies and sciences we rely on every day. Let's start with something you probably use right now: electricity. When engineers design power grids, generators, or even the charger for your phone, they use alternating current or AC. And AC electricity doesn't just flow in one direction, it oscillates like a wave. To represent and manage this wave mathematically, engineers use complex numbers. Why? Because imaginary numbers allow us to capture the direction and timing of waves, things real numbers alone can't handle. Next, we have signal processing. The technologies behind Wi-Fi, GPS, radio, and your phone's ability to connect to the internet. Anytime a device sends or receives a signal, it is using waveforms, and those waveforms are often represented using complex numbers. Imaginary numbers help us to analyze the frequency, amplitude, and phase of signals. In other words, without them, modern communication would fall apart. And it doesn't stop there. Imaginary numbers are the heart of quantum mechanics, where the equations that describe particles and energy all involve complex numbers. Control systems, which keep airplanes stable, rockets on course, and robots functioning. Computer graphics and animations, especially when dealing with rotation, light, and fractals. Even finance, where complex models help predict market behavior and risk. Here's a surprising truth. Whenever something moves, oscillates, spins, or waves, imaginary numbers probably play a role in describing it. They give us a mathematical language to handle things that are constantly changing, things that are dynamic, not static. So yes, they are called imaginary, but their impact is very real. Imaginary numbers took math from a flat world to a richer, multidimensional universe. They allow us to solve equations we couldn't solve before, understand systems we couldn't describe before, and build technologies that wouldn't exist otherwise. They may have started with a simple question: what is the square root of -1? But they opened the door to a new way of seeing the world. And now, you don't just know what imaginary numbers are, you know why they matter.